Okay, without further
Okay,
ado, we are live.
we are live with episode 2 of the Alpha Edge. So, thank you all for joining us. I'm here with my dear friend Craig Siegel, ready to unpack another really interesting topic, which I think a lot of you will find relevant in many areas of life, actually, particularly in business and your professional life. So, I'm going to start by asking Craig a question that'll get us rolling. You ready, Craig?
I never been more ready.
All right. So, Craig, I know you wrote a book called The Reinvention Formula, and you and I talk a lot about this stuff offline. So, right now, with all that's kind of feeling current for you, what does reinvention mean to you?
Yeah, I think there's a big misconception because I think when people hear the term reinvention, they get a little intimidated. Oh, does that mean I have to start over, start from scratch? Am I too old? Am I too late? Is it a saturated space? And I'm glad that you asked this because I want to take a moment and redefine what I think reinvention means. And, a word that we utilize a lot in our spiritual practices, but also something that's become very important in our everyday life is the word consciousness or awareness. And I think that all of us, you don't have to be super spiritual to necessarily subscribe to this, but I think it'll be helpful. We should always be looking to reinvent our consciousness every single day. And so what I mean by that is constantly changing the conversations in our head, changing the way that we think about things. Always be looking to expand, right? And so if we have that approach, like, it's funny because I was on a call earlier today with my community and I was saying in regard to like being around strategic relationships and building those out, being intentional, if you're not around people that lift you higher, they're probably actually bringing you down, because I don't really think there's a neutral when it comes to relationships. And so that's one example. But in regards to reinvention, what it means is we should constantly be doing an audit and looking to expand our awareness, our consciousness, and really just the way that we think so that we can continuously be improving and expanding. So, kind of put a bow on that. Reinvention doesn't necessarily only mean a career change. I think we should be constantly looking to reinvent our level of awareness and the way we think every single day so that we can stay on the path to continuously expanding.
Amazing. I love how you just connected um, consciousness to self-talk, actually, some of the voices in your head, which, how the level of awareness you have of the language you're speaking to yourself in itself changes your consciousness, which then impacts, as you said, your relationships, and impacts whether you're in the circuitry of inspiring others and being inspired by others. So I like how you made that connection. The other word that jumped out at me, Craig, is audit. Like that we're in constant audit, and it's true because I think about, well, first I have to have the awareness, then I have to assess what I just became aware of, and then once I have the awareness and I'm assessing, then what choice am I making now? Right. So tell me a little bit more about what this constant audit means to you.
I think it's so important to always be doing audits, or another way to put it might be to taking inventory, right? And so the reason why awareness and consciousness are so important in our lives is because it helps us to kind of take a different look at what's really happening. And if we don't continuously elevate our awareness or consciousness, we tend to just skate by or float around in the same situation. And so to be proactive and to take the time to do an audit or to reassess or to take inventory shows you where you are. And I think that, and this might be triggering to some that are listening, but as I always like to say, that's a good thing, because I think being triggered is an invitation to mastery. I think that we're all exactly where we believe to be possible for ourselves. And so if we're not manifesting the opportunities, relationships, money, things that we desire, it's not really an external thing. It's an internal shift that needs to be made. So we need to continuously be proactive and do these audits or self-actualization or take inventory to make sure that our thoughts, our beliefs, our environment are helping us get closer to where we desire to be. And that takes just the time, right? Like I know you love to talk about white space, and you've actually helped me a great deal be more proactive in creating white space, actually putting it in the calendar, meaning, so I'm working today. I don't have a scheduled call because I'm taking the time to assess, take some inventory, do an audit, and see what's working and what maybe needs to be improved. So I think we should all be looking to do regularly audits and take stock in where we are, and is it in alignment with where we want to go?
It's so interesting. The trigger alert is interesting because, you know, when you're feeling inspired and ambitious, you're like, yeah, let me look under the hood, right? Let me see how the system's working, where it's not working. And, you know, I find that when you're inspired, you can do the audit, the assessment, the inventory without the judgment, right?
Mhm.
Whereas if, you know, and that could be the trigger alert for some people, like, yeah, well, if I look under the hood, I'm not going to like what I have to see. And that's going to mean I have to make some choices now that I may not be willing to make. So I think an important ingredient there is, can you assess the situation without the judgment? You know, without the critical, the energy of criticism. How do you maintain that? I know you and I can get really jazzed up about stuff and we get really inspired. So when we look at something, we're like, ah, okay, yeah, that stinks. What are we going to do about it? And because we inspire each other so much, and we're both ambitious, we both get excited about things. I think it creates that safe space for that exploration. But how do you know, what advice would you give to our audience with someone's kind of at work, or, you know, listening to us now saying, yeah, but am I ready to really look at my situation? Am I ready to really confront some choices I may have to make? Am I ready to even consider reinventing? And that doesn't have to be, like you said, not a wide scale reinvention, could just be reinventing the way I think about my situation. How do you maintain that space?
I would just encourage anybody to ask themselves, what is the COI? As I like to say, the cost of inaction, right? So sometimes staying the same and not growing is the very thing that our soul resents most, because our soul loves to expand. And I know when I was in a career that I had outgrown and was no longer in alignment, if I could describe how it felt, it was like every day my soul was contracting as opposed to expanding. So you have to be willing to do the work. And I think some people refer to this as shadow work. I'm sure other people have different names for it, but the willingness to look under the hood and to face your fears, your doubts and insecurities, and know that anytime we feel that lack, or we feel that scarcity or that darkness, it's really an opportunity to transform. And is that not what life is all about? To
Yeah.
transform. And so for anyone that's thinking, well, you know, easy for you to say, you don't have as many skeletons in the closet as I do.
That's a good way of putting it.
You said earlier, and I want to reinforce it, no judgment, right? So when you're going to do this type of work, you don't judge yourself. You don't even have to approve of it, the stuff that you might find, but you do need to accept it if you want to make big changes and transform and continue to expand. So I would just invite everybody to really get excited about this type of work, because anytime you feel triggered or you proactively want to pull up the hood and face your darkness, all that stuff is an opportunity to correct and transform some of our own negative tendencies, or maybe the judgments that we've been carrying about those things. And now we have an opportunity to either let go, overcome them, or whatever needs to happen for us to get to our next level. So I think that this is some of the most important work we can actually ever do.
Amazing. Yeah, it's interesting when you say, you know, to get excited, and, you know, it makes me wonder, what tool can we kind of baby step someone into to get to that excitement? You know, I've noticed in coaching people for 15 years now, after 15 years on Wall Street, where it was all ambition, and like kind of transformed, reinvented myself into the coaching, I noticed that the thing that excites people the most actually is seeing themselves change. And I was like, wow, isn't that a motivator? And it's interesting. Sometimes as a coach, you have to help somebody make the change in order for them to see they can change and then get motivated by the change. So if you're not yet feeling excited that things can really change for you, I want to even take it kind of one step back and say, can you get curious? Like, how curious can you get about your situation and say, well, let's see what's going on here. And sometimes you have to trick yourself and say, well, I don't really need to do anything about it. I just want to see if I can take an objective, to have an objective view, just get curious about my situation. It's like when you want to start working. I know many times in my life, we fall on and off the wagon over the years. And I know whenever I, for whatever reason, fell off the wagon, I'd tell myself, oh, I'm just going to go to the gym to walk on the treadmill. I'm not going to do anything else. But when I get to the gym to walk on the treadmill, oh, and I'm going to go to the gym to walk on the treadmill and listen to something. I'm just going to space out, right? But then when I get there, I'm like, well, I'll do a little treadmill. Maybe I'll do a little this, a little that. And before you know it, I could have a great workout. But sometimes we have to trick ourselves with something as simple as, how curious can I get about my situation? Just to look at it on paper. If I could draw on paper, what's going on in different areas of my life, what's going on at work. And so with that, I want to ask you, Craig, we're so focused on business growth, and our clients hire us because they want to be more successful. What role do you think personal development plays in business success?
I think it's important to identify what success means first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine everybody probably has a different definition of success. I know, because you and I are so close, our definitions of success has certainly evolved over the years,
Yeah.
right? And also, for everyone listening that will catch replay, I encourage you to unapologetically desire it all, right? So relationships, abundance, financial freedom, alignment, fun, fulfillment, all that stuff. It's what I think you should measure success by, and also your spiritual work and so forth. But personal development is really everything, because if you're in a relationship, whether it's business or a significant other or a spouse, if you're both not on a spiritual path, or at least a personal development path, then it's very difficult for the relationship to thrive, right? Because when you're doing the work and you're developing, you're able to see things from a different perspective. And if somebody else is not doing the work, then their ego is probably getting the best of them. It's very hard for them to see what's actually happening without their own judgment or their own interpretation, right? So one of the things that I've noticed about myself, and by no means am I even close to perfect, but one thing that I've really worked on and has helped a great deal in my relationships is the ability to step back and see where someone else might be coming from. And that really helps. Like, all of a sudden, what used to be a fight or a big argument now is just a quick moment, because now you're able to see from a different perspective where they might be coming from. Doesn't mean anyone's right or wrong, just not in alignment or different. And the way that I was able to get to that place, which was a sign of maturity for me, was constantly developing myself. And so when it comes to business, I mean, there's just certain things that you have to be equipped with to not only achieve success, but maintain it, right? Because if you're not developing yourself, as we talk about a lot in our spiritual practices, you might achieve a little bit of success, maybe a spark of light, but there's a good chance that it will self-sabotage or won't be sustainable. But when we're constantly developing ourselves, or as we might say, expand our vessel or our capacity, then we can achieve more and more and more success. And so I think they go hand in hand. I think someone not should, but must put a priority on personal development if achieving business success is the desire for them. And I know you probably think similar, but also have your own perspective. I'd love to turn around and ask you how you feel about that as well.
Yeah, I thank you for asking me, because I think about this, not only think about it, but it's the work I've been doing for so long. And there's a saying in coaching, we say the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so even though I asked you this question about how does personal development affect business success, I don't actually believe there's a difference. So for example, you talked about relationships, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I have a relationship at work. I'm becoming more aware, more conscious, elevating, myself to not be as judgmental, etc. But yet I have a colleague who's complaining all day, who's, out to make everybody wrong and them right. And so then where's the personal development in that situation? I have to say, pause. If I now judge them for being judgmental, then where's my work? Right? Where was my work? Because and that's a tricky thing. Especially when you're always learning a new perspective, a new methodology, a new teaching, then you want to turn around, and as we love to inspire, we want everyone to be inspired and we want everyone to make the change. So for me, there is no difference between the personal and the business. And it was actually probably the greatest awareness I had in my career when I realized, wait a second, I'm not checking somebody at the door to come to work and do something totally different. And I think that's what triggered my reinvention 15 years ago when I left Wall Street. Is like, am I trying to be two people? Because it feels pretty miserable. Like, is there a way that I can be whole, one person everywhere I go? And is there a way I can inspire others to do that too? I think that was the greatest personal development, is the willingness to say, there's one of me and I'm everywhere I go just as I am. And I noticed that when I did that, other people felt inspired to do the same. Now, there were a lot of questions. Yeah, but do I bring my personal life to work? No, you bring your person to work, right? You bring your whole person to work. Doesn't mean you bring your personal, stories and so forth. And sometimes it's appropriate to do so. But can you be a whole person everywhere you go in every relationship? So that to me is where I'm actually not dividing the personal development work from the business success. And guess what? Business success comes from that integration of my being into everything I do. Like, this is me. This is how I think. This is how I think in here, and this is how I think aloud, right? And that's been the biggest breakthrough for me, and what's allowed me to inspire others to be more than do.
Beautiful.
That's the edge, right? Being is the edge.
It's all connected, right? Because the more you develop yourself, the more you shift your consciousness. And the more you shift your consciousness, the more you achieve results in the external world as well.
Yeah.
Right? So I agree with you. They're one and the same. And if you want to accomplish more things, whatever that looks like for you, then there's a direct correlation with the amount of personal development that you're willing to do on yourself. And I think it's just a beautiful question, and so important for everybody to take stock, do an audit. Are you constantly finding ways to develop yourself?
Yeah. Do you have an example, like, of how, if someone says, wait a second, what do you mean developing myself? Like, aren't I always changing and growing? And do you have kind of an example of what it could mean for different people, like what form it might take for different people?
So I'm a bit obsessed with personal development, and I'm not suggesting everybody should be. Maybe I need to find more balance in it. I don't know. These conversations that you and I are having are actually our dinner conversations.
Yeah.
With maybe a couple more jokes, but we love this stuff. We can't get enough of talking about development, aha moments, breakthroughs. We love this stuff. And so certain things that I do that might be helpful for other people is I proactively consume some sort of wisdom on a daily basis that can get me in the right frequency or help me learn something. So my morning routine is pretty extensive. It's important to me. So I wake up probably earlier than I need to. And during that time, I might be listening to a podcast, reading a book, listening to an audio book, something on YouTube, or just something that's elevating my consciousness or hopefully developing me in some capacity. I'm learning something. Sometimes I'm re-listening to something just to reinforce something. But something as simple as just creating some time for that is a way of developing yourself. Now, where it gets a little tricky is that I'm so obsessed with this stuff that I never want to shut it off. And even oftentimes, like my wife at night, if we're gonna quote unquote wind down, right? If we're gonna, like, I don't know the nicest way to say this, turn our brain off and watch something a little meaningless at the end of the day, even that time, I would prefer watching something that I think I can extract a message from, or that's somehow inspirational in some capacity, to an extent where she's like, Craig, I mean, can we just turn it off for a little bit? I love to develop myself because I love to learn and I love to expand. And I'm so fascinated with the fact that anybody listening right now, or that's going to see this or consume it in some capacity, we can expand ourselves every single day if we make the time to consume and develop, whether it's being in bigger rooms, listening to a podcast, listening to this show, having a mentor, a coach, studying something, signing up for a course. There's so many different things that you can do to continuously expand your capacity. And if I'm being honest, I'm a bit obsessed with it.
Well, I know that about you. I love that about you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Pot calling the kettle black, right? It's it's amazing because, I want to put it into perspective. For example, somebody who can never get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to learn something new or have a workout, if they change that tomorrow, that's personal development, right?
Definitely.
Somebody else can be doing that every morning of the year, but getting on their phone right away. If they change that, that's personal development, right? So there's no right or wrong. It's a question of how are you challenging yourself to be more present and to, even consuming wisdom, information, learning is how present can you be to receive,
Oof.
and that's where I think, when I think of like my early career, it was always like external effort, right? Do, like push it out, right? Push the effort out, push myself, and it's amazing. Maybe you referred to the white space, because creating white space, which is hard for doers, right? Like every minute counts, and our definitions of productivity. I know my definition of productivity has to be challenged every single day. And if I don't challenge it, I don't get the gift of that day, because I can have such narrow definitions of how I use my time, how productive it is, that I can miss the magic of that moment. So personal development for me sometimes is being still and doing nothing and saying, what can I make time to hear, to download, to even like listen to myself think, right? And so we're not saying go sign up for a 12-month seminar and do every wacky thing they challenge you to do. We're saying, like, for you, that's why the assessment and looking under the hood is so important. Like, what does change mean for me? How can I challenge myself today? What is is it the smallest thing? Like, is it what time I set my alarm? Is it, do I work out before going to work? Do I push myself there? Do I call somebody I don't really want to check on, but feel it's a moment of giving? There's no right or wrong. There's no true definition of it. It's a question of what makes you feel more you. And that's where we're not comparing you to somebody else. We're correct. Like, how can Craig be more Craig today? Right? How can I be more me today? How can the world experience more of me, my wholeness, my authenticity, my desire to help people change? How much more present can I be for people to feel that I'm really there for them, including right now? I mean, there's people I don't know who are listening to this, and I'm thinking, how can those people feel like my energy is here to inspire them?
Love it. T, can you talk about some of the miracles that you've experienced by just the superpower that is being really present in the moment?
It's I think the one of the greatest miracles about being present is the feeling of presence. Is, talk about spiritual, like being present sounds like something so many spiritual practices or wisdoms and talk about. And I think the greatest miracle, and actually coaching taught me this. Coaching taught me to be present. And it's been such a gift for me because when I'm especially one-on-one, and over the years I developed the skill for a larger audience as well, like the presence, like the kind of the what I can receive even being still. Like I know you and I were, for example, you and I were doing a role play in front of a room, right? About a month ago,
Mhm.
right? And the idea of the role play was that someone was being really difficult in the group, and the moderator of the group, which was me, was supposed to show the audience how to facilitate. I was basically teaching facilitation skills and moderation skills, right? And and I knew, first of all, the example was set up for the person to be difficult. Like that's how we set up the role play. This person is going to be a pain, right? So I know this person is going to be a pain, and yet, so when he started speaking and I'm demonstrating to a room full of people, I just turned my energy to him, and I just like stayed still with myself, right? And what happened was miraculous. And by the way, it always surprises me. Like presence, which is just like I'm in my body, I'm breathing, I'm aware that I'm here, not thinking of the future, not remembering the past, just right here. And I'm listening to him. And can't even remember what I did next. But then in the feedback, the person said, I can't believe what happened. I was so determined to be difficult. And suddenly I didn't feel like being difficult anymore. And I didn't do much other than give the person my wholeness, my stillness, and my attention in the form of presence. And that, what I've learned about just being still and present is itself a miracle, because I have a lot of energy. My whole life, I've been busy, right? Like I valued busyness. I think busyness creates, right? If you told me 10 years ago, oh, presence creates, I'm like, how can presence create? You're not doing anything, right? Right. But now I know what presence and stillness can create in a one-on-one, in a group, in any relationship. I think that's been the greatest miracle for me. And honestly, coaching has shown me that, because when I'm with somebody, I'm so committed to being present for them that the result is the miracle for me as much as it is for them.
So would you say that the real ROI is in being present as opposed to thinking you have to be super busy?
It's so hard to admit. And yes, now I'm not going to sit on my couch all day and be present and not do anything. There is, there, like you and I've talked about this a lot. There's value to action, but not without awareness, right? Not without presence. Like you can take action with a presence. And by the way, that presence give you the confidence in the action. Huh? How does that happen? Right? So we want the confidence to take the action. The confidence actually comes from the presence. Right? Say, I'm about to take this action. I'm totally clear. And if I'm not clear, by the way, the action is going to get me clear. Right? So just the presence with the action I'm about to take will get me clear, or the action itself will get me clear. Or third possibility, the stillness will give me the clarity that it may be the wrong action to take. So either way, that stillness, that presence, and we called it white space. That space can be a split second. It doesn't have to be hours. It can be like, hold on, what's happening here, right? What did we do before we got on this call, you and I? Just come to the call, complete, whole, ready, not even planning what we're going to say. I had a couple of questions planned, but that was it.
I feel called to even drop a little bit of spirituality, because I know that the audience has the appetite for it, not too spiritual. But one of the other benefits that I've experienced from being super present is that you become super available. And when I say available, it's for that download or that intuition or that unbelievable thought or idea that changes everything. And you can't typically receive that if you're just going, your mind is racing, or you're just grinding. So, another added miracle, if you will, from being super present is you become more available to be that channel, if you will, to receive the unbelievable nugget, thought, idea, download that might come to you as soon as 2 seconds before you need it, but will only come to you when you're super present and in the moment.
Amazing. I'm going to give it a wrap on that because you said the word that we both care so much about, and I want to make our next show on that, which is intuition. And how does that play in the workplace? How does that drive success? And how do we tap into it? How do we increase it? And how do we translate it into doing the right thing that actually drives the success? So, and we're going to talk about how we use our intuition and how we help people tap into their intuition, and we can go on and on. Glad there will be more shows. So thank you, Craig, for another deep conversation, and fun as always. It's always fun to unpack these with you.
Love you. Before we land the plane, T, you want to leave the listeners with maybe just one final nugget that they can chew on until the next episode?
Yeah, I really want to challenge this idea of presence, like what happens in that stillness. And I'd love, by the way, we would love to hear from you. You know, message us, leave a comment on the below this show. We would love to hear from you because we want to know more than anything what miracles can come for you just by being still. And it could be a stillness in a meeting. It could be a presence when on a phone call. It can be a presence you wake up and 5 minutes you do nothing. You're just there with yourself. Whatever it is, I want to know what magic can come from you being present. Let us know.
Beautiful. Love it. Perfect place to land the plane. This was amazing. And we'll see you back for episode 3 of the Alpha Edge.
See you soon.